In this video, we're going to cover everything you need to know in order to start a house flipping business, including things like what do you need in order to start a house flipping business? How do you find properties to flip? How do you finance those properties? How do you sell those properties? And some of the legal and tax structure questions. So let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Greg Gaudet. I am the founder, owner, and operator of Maui Home Buyers, and I am a full-time real estate investor flipping, wholesaling, and buying rental property houses and condos here on the island of Maui, Hawaii. And this video is recorded exclusively for realestatebees.com. So let's dive into it. What do you need to start a house flipping business? The number one thing that you need in order to start a house flipping business is work ethic and drive and determination. It's all that. It's not a tangible thing. It's your attitude. Um, I'd say when I tell people that I'm a house flipper, probably 9 out of 10 of them say, "Oh, that's so cool. I wish I could flip houses." And the reality is that pretty much anybody could do this. Um, but it does take a lot of work. It's a very competitive industry, and everybody wants to do it. It seems glamorous, and so there's a lot of competition, and it mostly just requires that determination to work until you make it happen. So besides the attitude, which is number one, a little bit of an education, which you're going to get from this video right here. Some of the basic things, obviously like a Wi-Fi connection, a smartphone is pretty much necessary, I would say. Some of these things are pretty basic that pretty much everybody has access to today. So I won't worry too much about those. In terms of finances, you don't need a lot of money. You really don't need any money to start flipping homes. However, I would not recommend that you dive in and really try to start a house flipping business if you don't have any extra cash in the bank. Not maybe as little as a couple $1,000s, just something so that when you do get that first house under contract, if you need to say make an earnest money deposit to secure the purchase, you might need to put $1,000. I mean, a lot of buyers, a lot of times in a real estate sale, buyers will be putting tens and tens of thousands of dollars, especially in a market with a high price like how we have here in Maui, where you might average home is about $1.2 million. But I've found that it's really not necessary. In fact, it's very rare, if ever, that we put down more than $1,000 as an initial earnest money deposit. So I would say, definitely not less than 1,000. If you have, a couple thousand in the bank, that is very helpful, not only for that earnest money, but you're also going to have to do a little bit of investing into marketing and building your business too. So just a little bit of cash. It certainly helps if you have tens of thousands. When I started, I had about 30,000 that I had saved up over the years. And that certainly made starting my business significantly easier. However, that's not necessary. And I'll explain more about that in this article and how you can start a business with almost no money, let's say $1,000 to be at the minimum, just by finding partners and again working hard and having that determination that we covered in number one. So those are the main things, and let's move on to the next topic. So the biggest and probably most important question in this entire article that everyone's going to be wondering is, how do you find a house to flip? It's extremely challenging to find a property that you can buy at a good enough price that you have that cushion that you're not going to lose money, and if you do a good job, you can make a profit. So some of the number one way, I would say, of all the ways is direct mail. So I think if you talk to any house flipper, they pretty much all rely heavily on direct mail. And what do I mean by direct mail? So I mean finding basically is just sending out postcards or sending out letters in the mail to different properties that have some type of indication that might lead you to think that that could be a good property to flip. And you'll have to send quite a lot of these. A lot of times a beginner will think if they can just send out 5 or 10 letters, someone will call and they'll get a great deal and it'll be their first flip. Well, it's not that quite that easy unless you have an extremely high quality list of leads to mail. Um, that's my personal business structure is I don't send out tens of thousands of letters. In fact, I barely even send out hundreds of letters. I maybe send 100 to 200 letters a month, but those letters are highly focused to the most motivated sellers. And so it's a very targeted and focused approach, so that I'm not doing as much volume as I could do, but the time that I'm spending is much better invested. So, which properties do you send these letters to? Well, you want to look for some kind of indication of motivation. You don't want to, I think the best textbook example would be look at the house down the street that just sold on the MLS. The realtor listed it, and it's fully renovated, beautiful turnkey, and the owner is just got a promotion at their job, and they have plenty of money in the bank. They're buying new cars, and they're obviously not in a distressed or motivated situation. That is exactly the property that you do not want to market to and spend your time and money working to get in touch with. You want to find the polar opposite of that property, which would be maybe still down the street, but a property where a number of indicators, which number one could be just the visible appearance of the property. So overgrown grass, peeling paint, junk in the yard, visible repairs needed if the roof is missing shingles or tiles. Any one of those indicators is a really good sign. If it looks like it's vacant, if there's mail or newspapers piling up, all these different indicators tell you that there might be something going on there. It's possible that the owner is just tired of taking care of the property. Maybe they had tenants that they had to evict, and they just haven't had the wherewithal to go through the process of finding new tenants or whatever the case may be. That's probably, I would say, the number one indicator to look for and approach to finding a deal. Would be finding that property, sending them a letter. The best ways to do this are driving for dollars and using a direct mail service. So I'm a big fan of driving for dollars, which is a phrase that we in the real estate world use that refers to just going out in your car, driving around different neighborhoods, and looking for properties that have some of these indicators of distress, as we call it. So you could be driving around your neighborhood. You could drive around at new neighborhoods. Obviously, you don't want to drive the same streets every time because you want to look for new properties that you hadn't seen before. And this is just one of the best ways to find deals, and it's tried and true. It always has been. I mean, not always, for a very long time. This has been one of the best ways to find the best deals. Almost every investor I know either does this or has people that do it for them. And so once you find those leads, again, if you have the time and you want to save money, you can sit there and write them all letters. But that's tough. I've done it myself. I've personally sat down and wrote letters to dozens of sellers. I've also written one letter and left the name blank and the address blank, and then photocopied it 20 times or 50 times. And then for all the deals, properties that I was interested in or thought were distressed, I would just write in the name and the address, and it would be a much quicker way for me to mail all those owners. However, I don't recommend that. Direct mail is very cheap, and there's so many providers out there that can provide really, really high quality products for you. at very reasonable pricing. And there's so many different options too. You don't need to start off with a $3 per piece mailer. If you're just getting started, there's a lot of investors have proven that the old postcard still works very well, and I'm sure you've received them yourself. I get them all the time from realtors in the neighborhood saying, "We just sold the house down the street. We want to sell your house." We're doing the exact same thing. We're sending that postcard out, and it's saying, "I want to buy your house." And essentially, the message is, "I'm a cash buyer. I saw your property. I'm interested in buying it. I'd like to make you an all cash offer. I will take it as is. I'll close quick. I'll take care of the tenants. Whatever your problem is, I will handle it. If you'd like to sell, please give me a call so I can make you an offer." So that's generally the message. Of course, depending on your market and what type of properties you're going after, you might want to tweak it, but that's pretty much always the message. So getting that message out, again, like I said, you want to find a direct mail company. There's plenty of them out there, plenty of competition. The pricing is reasonable. And again, the postcards can start as little as maybe 50 cents a piece, sometimes less. And then the higher end pieces will do. So I personally do a mix of postcards. A lot of times I'll do a campaign where if I spot a property, first they get a postcard, then a couple weeks later, they get a letter. Then a couple weeks later, they get another postcard, and then again another letter, and that tends to catch their attention. On the direct mail topic, you never want to just send one letter. Now, yeah, you'll get lucky every once in a while and maybe send one letter and get a call back and get a deal out of it. But that's extremely rare. You need to be consistent with these sellers, especially because you got to remember they aren't necessarily looking to sell the day that you happen to stumble across their house, right? Whatever situation is going on is evolving, and at some point, they get to a point where they start thinking, you know what? I'm done with this house. Maybe I want to just get rid of it and not deal with it. And that's when you need your phone number and your letter to be in their face. So that's the reason why you need to consistently send them letters. And a lot of the direct mail companies will recommend that 6 months would be the minimum to send one letter every month for 6 months. But really the most proven successful time frame would be to send a letter every month for about 9 months, 9 to 10 months. And if you do that with all your leads, a lot more of them are going to end up calling you and selling to you, and you'll get a lot more houses to flip. So on that topic, now there is one service that you absolutely cannot get by without in this world. In terms of the driving for dollars and direct mail, there is one service that is absolutely critical to this part of the business. It's an app that I use every single day. It's called Deal Machine, and I'm a huge fan of them. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to be really mentioning other businesses, but it's such a critical part of my business, and almost every investor I know just completely depends on this service. And basically, it's an app with a phone, a map. And so when you're driving for dollars, you can just when you see a house, okay, that house looks kind of run down. You click on it in the map, and if you need, you can see all the owner's information. But you just add the property, and then the other aspect, the direct mail side, is already worked into there too. So you just press Start Mail, and then I automatically get whatever uh, schedule of mailing you determine. So, like I said, I alternate between postcard and letter every month, and that is the number one way that I use in our business for finding deals. I believe there are other services that do the same thing. I have tried a couple of them in the past, but just I think it's one of those things that across the board there's no competition. Um, so my experience has been that the Deal Machine app is the best one for that, and it's the single critical. service that I need for my business. That there's not another competitor that does it similarly. Now, in terms of direct mail companies, there's plenty of those. I do have my favorites there also. I like working with Open Letter, but really doesn't matter. They're all great. Well, I don't know if they're all great, but all the ones that I've worked with have been great. And there's not much of a differentiator there. It's personal preference and maybe pricing might matter to you, but the difference with those companies between the Driving for Dollars app, Deal Machine, and the actual direct mail companies is going to be that you may also want to be marketing to companies or to leads and houses that you didn't see driving for dollars. So what properties are you going to market to that you didn't just stumble across? Where are you going to find out about these properties? Well, there's a few different ways you can do that. One is going to be going online and just finding a list of motivated sellers. And there are different websites out there that you can use. I think List Source is a big one, and a few others out there. That's, again, this is not something that really doesn't matter who you go to. So you probably just want to see who's got the best pricing. But you want to find a list of the indicators of what's typically makes somebody more likely to be wanting to sell fast, wanting to sell for cash, wanting to sell as is. All of the different reasons why somebody would want to sell to a flipper and not just call a real estate agent, a realtor, to list it publicly on the MLS. So what are those indicators? Those are anything from a common one is age. So looking at older owners, that is particularly absentee owners. We call absentee owners anybody that doesn't live in the property. So if they might live in the house next door, but they don't live in that house, because if it's their house, if they don't live in that house, then they don't absolutely need that house, right? Everybody needs shelter. And so if you are an owner occupant, meaning you live in the home, you do need a house. You can't just sell the house the next day and it doesn't matter, right? A lot of times owner occupants do call us and we do buy their houses to flip, but it's not as often, and they still need to find another place to go live. So, and when you have an absentee owner, basically we're talking about properties that most of the time are a rental property. Sometimes it was, they lived there and they moved out and they just hadn't sold it, or, it could be a number of different situations. It could have been their family was living there and they passed away. There's a number of different reasons why you may have an absentee owner. I'd say just the majority of them, though, are going to be a rental property. So that's probably the number one indicator. You want to look for properties that the owner does not live in. I personally, one of my biggest factors or indicators is that I always make sure the properties I'm looking at have not sold in the last about 3 years, I'd say. For the most part, if somebody just bought a house in the last year or two, it's very, very rare that there's a reason they would be a motivated or distressed seller, unless something really drastic changed in their life. I did just get a new flip under contract yesterday, and this is probably the newest one I've ever dealt with. This guy bought the house 5 years ago. So I'm pretty surprised. Most of the time when somebody calls me to flip their house, they have owned it for some time. But in this case, he's going through a divorce and he wants to move to a different island. And the house is just, it was dated and kind of, not in the best condition when he got it. And he just has been traveling a lot and hasn't been there, and it's gotten worse. So, and he also wants to sell within 30 days. And that's why he called me, and it worked out perfect. So that's also actually a case where he's an owner occupant. So that does show you that it can happen. It's just much less common. So back to building your list. Again, the biggest indicators I personally look for are age. So somebody that's older that, maybe is getting tired of being a landlord, definitely an absentee owner. You can also, a lot of these online list services provide information such as their mortgage you can find out, are they delinquent on their mortgage? How much equity do they have in their mortgage? Um, and again, the sales date, right? So you want to make sure they didn't buy it recently, and you want to make sure that they have equity. So I will typically do, as a very just general, if I'm looking to build a list, I'm going to look for owners 60 years old and over, that are absentee owners that have owned the property for more than 3 years, and that have more than, I would say, at least 20 to 30% equity in the property. Because if the property is worth $1 million and they owe the bank $990,000, there's no way for me to make a deal out of it. There has to be some equity in there for us to be able to negotiate and come up with a win-win. So once you create that list, you can take that to one of those online direct mail companies that we talked about before. Again, not much of a difference between all of them. The style of the letter, the price, things like that would help you decide which one you personally would like to work with. Next up, so we've covered direct mail, we've covered driving for dollars, we've covered building lists online. So the other ways to find deals are from wholesalers. Now, where I live here in Maui, there are not really any wholesalers. Our business is the only active and consistent wholesaler that I'm aware of. And I really, really wish that there were other people doing wholesales here in Maui, because as a flipper as well, it would make my job a lot easier, because finding the deal is the hardest part, again, especially in this market. Now, I've heard about back during the recession, how easy it was. You know, every house listed on the market was just dying to sell, and you can offer them whatever you wanted and they'd take it, but it's just not like that today. So finding the deals is the hardest part, and having a wholesaler to find the deal for you is just a dream come true. A wholesaler basically means another investor. A lot of times, like in my case, I am a flipper and a wholesaler, and I also buy rental properties. So I kind of do dabble in a little bit of all these aspects of the business. But there's plenty of guys out there that only do wholesales, and there's plenty of girls out there that only flip houses, and they have their focus, and that's what they do. So what is a wholesaler? A wholesaler is somebody that goes out and does this work of finding the deal. So all those things we've been talking about so far, doing the direct mail, the driving for dollars, finding those sellers and talking to them and negotiating the deal, getting it under contract, which means they have the legal right to buy that property and the seller cannot sell it to anybody else. They have a purchase and sale agreement or a purchase contract signed with that seller. And so they have the exclusive right to buy that property. Then they go out to all the flippers and other investors and say, hey, I have this great deal and I'm willing to sell it to you. And then basically, they are selling the contract for that house. So a great example, I just closed a wholesale for a house where I got the house under contract for $800,000. It was probably worth, in the condition it was in, it needed a lot of work, about 400,000 in repairs. But in its condition, it was worth about 1.1, I would say $1 million to 1.1 million. So I was able to wholesale that contract, sell that contract. I sold it for $30,000. So to another investor who paid $830,000 total for that property. So this was possible because I did all the work of finding that seller. I had sent him direct mail, and I called him, I sent him letters over time. And after a few months, he called me and he had been ready to sell. And we talked for months. It was a long process. It wasn't just a couple days and boom, we're done. It was a long process. And at the time when I got the deal under contract, I had other deals going on and I didn't have the bandwidth to take on this house to flip it. So instead, I just decided, let's just make a quick profit on it, pass it on to another investor, which is why we ended up deciding to wholesale it. So again, that's essentially what I did in that role. Was I acted as a wholesaler. I found the deal and I brought it to another investor that was able to buy it at a discount and even after paying me the fee for doing the work of finding the deal. And he bought it at the discount because it works for everybody, works for the seller too, because now the seller didn't have to worry about the repairs. The buyer is going to handle all of those repairs. I was actually just there yesterday, and they've got quite a lot of work going on. It's going to be about 6 months worth of work because, like I said, it's a really big renovation and it's a really big, really nice property. But once he's done, it's going to be worth about 1.7 to 1.9 million, and it's going to be a great deal for everybody all around. So again, going back to the wholesalers, there are, like I said, a lot of people out there and a lot of companies out there that do this full time. That's all they do is wholesale deals, and I love wholesalers. I wish we had them. Most markets do. Again, my market is very small. We have a population of 150,000 people here, and we're an island, so there's not just another town next door where other people are wholesaling and they're doing deals in Maui. So chances are that there is somebody that is doing wholesaling in your market. If I were you, that would be the first step on my list. I would go find those wholesalers and tell them you want to be on their buyers list. You're a flipper. You want to be added to their buyers list, which would mean that basically you'll give them your email address and your phone number, and you'll probably give them an idea of what you're looking for. If you're starting off, you'll probably be looking for lower priced properties, easier, less barriers to entry, and smaller rehabs, so you can kind of ease into the process. So how do you find the wholesalers, right? Well, you go to real estate meetups. That's another way to find deals. Um, Essentially, really another way, like that's the best way to find wholesalers is by going to real estate meetups. You can also find them by going on websites like realestatebees.com, where real estate professionals are listing their businesses and their services. Just like you can find Maui homebuyers on there, you can find any other real estate wholesaler in your market that can help you find deals. And then you reach out to that person, you let them know, I want to be added to your buyers list. Once you're added to their buyers list, anytime they get a deal under contract that they want to sell, again, they're going to be selling the contract, and that's going to give you the right to buy that house. They're going to email you that deal. They're typically going to send you the address, pictures of the house, what the price is, what the assignment fee is, and what they estimate the rehab to be. And then they should also have comparable sales and not sure if I said pictures, but pictures of the property. So again, you can find those wholesalers on realestatebees.com, but you can also find them by meeting them in person and going to your local real estate meetups. So almost every city, probably almost every town out there has a group of real estate investors that have meetups. I organize in our market here in Maui. I organize meetups for investors to get together. I do them on Zoom. I do them in person at Starbucks. Sometimes we do them at a brewery or a restaurant, and it's a fun time. It's a great learning experience. And overall, it's just a really great way to network with other investors and find those wholesalers, because there's no other way. It's pretty hard to know who's wholesaling in your market if you don't go to where the wholesalers are. So, and the wholesalers want to find you also, because the reason the wholesaler is at the meetup is because they want to find the cash buyer, as we call the flipper, is the cash buyer, right? They want to find the guys that are going to flip the house to buy their deals once they get the wholesale under contract. So don't be bashful about approaching them. They're just as anxious to meet you as you are to meet them. And go up and get on their buyers list. Next up, last main source I'm going to talk about is for finding deals to flip are auctions. This one I'm going to give a little bit of maybe a hesitance on, just for somebody starting off, because there's a lot that you need to understand before you go out and buy a property at an auction. A lot of the auctions are no contingencies, no outs, right? Like once you make a bid, you are buying that house, or you're at least losing a deposit. Again, in my market, at the live in-person auction at the courthouse, you need to have 10% of your max bid at risk in order to just to place the bid. So if anything changes, you find out, oh, it needs foundation work or there's a bigger problem than anticipated, then you can lose that money. And on an $800,000 house, that's $80,000 you could be losing just because you are, if you're, new and you don't know everything that you need to check, like your title report. Checking title is one of the most critical things you need to do when you're bidding on an auction property. Um, Now, generally speaking, the online auctions are a little lower risk than the in-person courthouse sheriff sale type of auctions. The online auctions are almost always going to be properties that have gone through foreclosure and are now bank owned or also referred to as REO, the initials or the letters REO, which stands for real estate owned. And essentially, REO just means that this home is owned by the bank. REO is the bank's term for their portfolio of real estate owned. And so it's that term, that phrase has just caught on as being the go-to phrase for a property that is could be referred to as a foreclosure because it did go through foreclosure. However, it is, and I don't know if it's right or wrong to call an REO property a foreclosure. Again, it did go through a foreclosure to become an REO, but really, I think the appropriate um, name of the property at that stage is an REO, a real estate owned or bank owned property. Once the bank goes through their process of doing the foreclosure, which at the courthouse, that's what is happening. The bank is foreclosing on the property. And in order, part of the foreclosure process is to have a public auction where anybody can come and bid on the property. Typically, at least here in the Maui market, the bank will set their opening bid. So they are going to start and make the first bid. And it's typically going to be somewhere around their total payoff, their total debt owed on that mortgage. So if the borrower owes $500,000 on a mortgage and the bank is foreclosing, a lot of times the bank is going to go to the auction and enter an initial bid, a starting bid, somewhere around what their total amount owed is. Once they finish that process of the foreclosure, that property goes back to the bank. They take ownership if nobody else buys it. And then they have a couple different options of how they sell that property, but a really common and popular one is that they then auction the property on an online auction. These are a lot more, a lot easier and more beginner friendly. They do tend to have a little bit more competition, I would say. So you need to watch a few more of them, I would say, in order to actually get one that's a good deal. Um, but there's a lot lower barrier to entry because you don't have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. You can just, most of the auction websites will require a couple $1,000 hold on your credit card in order to make a bid. However, I still recommend being very careful with the online auctions. Make sure that you have gone to, watched a lot of these auctions first off, and gone and when you can, when they allow you to see the property, go and see them, inspect them, get a really good feel. Just, I don't recommend seeing your first online auction, thinking it's a pretty good price and just jumping on it and throwing all your money all in on it. That usually ends badly. I know a lot of guys that have done that before, and almost every time it ended badly. Um, there's been so many, I have a lot of friends where their very first time at the auction, some property came up and it was like this crazy low price and they didn't understand why nobody was bidding on it. So they bid on it, they win it, they have to put their life savings into closing the property. And then they find out there's some major title problem it's not worth anything, or there's some major problem that you never would have foreseen if you didn't have the experience of just watching these auctions happen. So again, not to discourage you, there's certainly potential there, and especially in the bigger markets, in the bigger your city is, the more volume you're going to have. So the more properties you're going to have going through online auctions every day. And there's a few of these different sites out there. They're very easy to find. So check them all out and watch a few of the auctions and kind of get a feel for how they work. And so those are the main ways that we use to find properties. Let's move on to the next topic. Next, we're going to talk about how to finance your flip property. So the number one way that flippers finance their properties is through hard money lenders. What is a hard money lender? Well, a hard money lender is what we call an asset-based lender. So they're, in a lot of ways, they're very similar to your bank that's going to give you the traditional mortgage to finance the purchase of your home that you would live in. However, they are that bank and that type of traditional financing option rarely works for a flip because the bank wants the home to be livable condition, safe, clean, and all these different things that a lot of times if you're selling a house or buying a house to flip it, there's something wrong with it that's going to cause it to maybe not qualify for traditional financing. Or there's also the issue that the seller needs to sell fast and you don't have time to go get a loan from the bank, because doing that can take up to 30 days, sometimes 45 or even more days. So traditional financing is very, very rarely an option when flipping houses. The number one option, again, is hard money lending, which is an asset-based lender. And there's plenty of them out there. So it all just comes down to who you think is giving you the best rates and terms. They're going to be a much higher interest rate and you're going to pay more points for these loans. But because you're going to be making a profit on the deal, that's okay. You're happy to pay the higher interest rate because if you're making, let's say you're going to make $50,000 flipping this house, why do you care if you have to pay $3,000 in points and interest, for example, right? So yeah, the hard money lenders, that's the best option out there. They typically do have to appraise the home, but aside from that, they're not really looking at your credit. They're not so much concerned about the borrower. The main thing that they want to see from you is experience. So they will still, most of them, or at least I know they are out there, the hard money lenders will lend to somebody that's first, doing their first flip. You're just going to pay a higher interest rate. So for us, we usually, because we have plenty of experience and we have a really good relationship with our hard money lender, we generally will pay around 8% interest for our hard money loans, 8, sometimes 9%, and somewhere between 1.5 to 2 points. Meaning if the total loan amount is $1 million, 2 points is going to be, what's it going to be? $20,000. So 2% of that loan amount. And that's how the hard money lender makes their money. It's on the points, not on the interest so much. So for somebody that's new, if it's your very first deal, they're probably, usually somewhere between 12 to up to maybe 14 or 15% interest, and maybe 3 to 4 points is probably about the going rate, I would say, for somebody's first or second deal. Now, if that's too high and that kills the deal and your numbers don't work, then there is an option. You can go out and find an experienced investor like myself. I do this all the time with other investors where they don't have the experience necessary in order to get the good interest rate, the lower rates and the good deal from the hard money lender. So they come to me and say, will you sign, use your experience and basically join me on this deal, and you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is put your name on it so the lender sees that we have an experienced investor on the team, and they'll give us that better those better terms. And so you can do that. You can go out and find an investor in your area, or probably don't even have to be in your area, but just another investor that's willing to put their name down on the deal in exchange for a percent usually of the profits. So it's a great deal for the investor. I love it when new investors come to me with that, because as long as the numbers check out, I'm going to look at the deal and make sure that I'm not putting my name on a deal that's not going to work. But I can get paid just for letting them borrow my experience. So it's a great deal for them. Usually a lot of times a great deal for the new investor, because they can save on those points and interest, and lower their upfront risk by giving up some of the profit in the end, right? If the deal goes really well, they give up a little profit, right? But if they had not done that, if they had just gone with the higher interest and higher points, and the deal didn't go as good as expected, let's say they broke even, this higher rates and points could lead to them losing money, rather than if they had brought the experienced investor in and the deal broke even, then they would break even because they don't owe the other investor anything because there's no profit to share. So that's a great option. Other things you need to know about the hard money lenders, like I said, they're more based on the asset. So they are going to look at the value of the property. And they're also going to look at the after repair value, meaning once you've done your renovations, what's this property going to be worth? Earlier, we talked about a property I wholesaled recently that I got under contract for $800,000. And the hard money lender of the flipper, the buyer that I sold it to, they had their appraiser come out, and I believe they appraised the as is condition for about 1.2 million or 1.15, and then the after repair they were going to be putting around I believe it was $350,000 in total renovations, and the final after repair value the appraiser projected to be about 1.7 million. So yeah, the lender's going to look at all those things, make sure that value is there, and that makes it a lot easier for you. It also makes it a lot faster because they don't have to do credit reports, check your W-2 income, your bank statements, and all these things. They just look at the property, make sure the value is there. Yep, okay, good. They will check your credit most of the time, but yeah, it's not super critical. They're not really worried about it. You might get a little bit higher rate if you have really bad credit, but they're not as picky as the traditional lenders. The other ways to finance your deals are, if you have a seller that doesn't need to close quick and the house is in pretty good condition, you could get traditional financing if you can qualify and have the down payment. But again, a lot of times that's not the case with a flip, but it is an option when that's the situation. And finally, I would say the other really popular option for funding flips is to find a partner. So this is another time when going to these real estate meetups comes in really handy. You can meet people. In fact, I've done this myself, where in my early days investing, I met a partner at a real estate meetup. She was a lady that had cash. She wanted to invest, but she was a CPA. She had a busy career and didn't have time to go looking for deals. So she wanted to find somebody to partner with, somebody that was starting an investing business like myself. And so she invested, I found a deal, we partnered, and we still actually own that property today. And I love it. I make a killing off that property, and just all based on the work that I did when I first met her 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a great deal. So that's something you may want to consider. That example I gave was for buying a rental, but I've also done the same thing with flips, where when I was first starting off, I found an active investor, a very experienced investor that had a lot of cash, wanted to invest, but also had different aspects of his business. He was building a commercial real estate business, sorry, that he was focused on. So he didn't have time to go out and find the houses to flip, but he still wanted to flip houses and wanted to be involved in that. So he found me at a meetup, and he asked me if I would work with him and do some flips with him. So I did, and he brought the funds. We actually did use hard money in that case, but he brought the down payment. So that was actually a combination of using hard money lender and a partner to finance my flips. And I did that, worked with him for about a year. And we do, I'd say our average deal, we needed around, anywhere from 50 to $250,000 in cash down for our portion of the down payment plus the rehab. And so he would cover all of that. And since I was a newer investor at that time, we would use his experience. So we got better terms. And then we split the profits 50-50. Today, I still don't use my own money when I do flips. Now I have a different partner, and it's actually a better situation for me now because my partner now pays cash. He actually has saved up the money. So he's got the cash, and we use that to invest. So we don't have to rely on a hard money lender. And this is, in my opinion, probably the best way. I mean, if everybody's got to determine what's right for them, you can make more money by doing it on your own and using a hard money lender because then you're just paying the points and interest. And if you're getting really good deals, then you're not splitting the profit with a partner. You're keeping all the profits. You would definitely make more money this way. But, for me, I'm risk adverse. I don't need to squeeze every penny of profit out of every deal. I would much rather have a partner that we do it together. There's somebody to help, if something needs to be done at the house and I'm busy, he can help out and go down there. There's a lot of advantages to having a partner. The downside, obviously, is at the end of the day, when we get that big payoff, we have to split those profits 50-50. So I make a lot less money from my flips, but I also have to jump through a lot less hoops. I can make stronger offers when I'm competing for a deal because I don't have to pay those points and interest. So my partner is going to write the check for cash, and we can also close quicker because hard money lenders are fast to close, but they usually do still need about 2 weeks 2 to 3 weeks, I'd say, to fund. Um, Whereas me and my partner, because we're literally taking cash out of our bank, the cash is sitting in the bank ready to go, we could close in tomorrow if the title company can close that fast. So that's the best possible strategy for me and my goals and my risk tolerance and my situation. You need to determine what's the right one for you based on all those factors. And that's how you fund a flip. So let's move on to the next topic, which is how to sell your flip. When it comes time to sell the flip, you want to find a really good realtor and somebody that's going to do a good job of selling the house for you. Now, what you don't want to do is call your friend John, who you went to high school with, who just happens to have his real estate license. That's the number one last worst possible option because there are a lot of people with their real estate license out there, and the majority of them are not real estate professionals, I would say. Most people that have their license do, maybe one or two sales a year. They do them for family and friends, but they work, they have another full-time job. That is not the person that you want selling your flip. A lot of times they might do an excellent job. So I don't want to generalize too much, but for the most part, what I personally look for when I want a realtor to list my flip, so that sell it for the highest possible amount, I want the most experienced what I call the top producer realtor, which is going to be the realtor that does a lot of volume, meaning maybe $20 million a year. It depends on the market and the pricing of the houses in that market, because there might be a market where doing $5 million a year is like you're in the top 10 realtors if prices are low. Here on Maui, you got to be at least 20 million a year. I mean, if you're doing 20 million a year, that's less than 20 houses a year. So that's a lot, but it's not a whole lot of volume at today's prices. Again, as prices go up, that yearly volume amount needs to go up also. How do you find those realtors? Well, you can go online. There's a lot of different ways to find these things. You can just ask the realtor. If you're talking to one, you can just ask them, how much volume did you do last year? What are your stats? Are you in the top 100 of this in the state? What are your credentials? You can go to different websites like realestatebees.com, and you can search on here for realtors, and you can see what their credentials and their experience, and you can just ask them. You can Google. You can also search for your area. So I could search for top producing realtors in Maui, or a popular thing we have here in Hawaii is a we there's a publication that announces the top 100 realtors each year. So the realtors that do the most dollar volume. So I'll go to there and see which realtors are kind of in my market, my really local area. And I like using those top producing realtors because they've done this so many times that there's a reason why they do so much sales. So that's who I like to work with. The other advantage I think to working with one of them is that they do so many sales that the top, I would say there's probably 5% of all realtors that do 80 to 90% of the sales. Those realtors work with each other every single day. So they know, they already have those conversations and relationships in place. So when the buyer comes in to see your house and make an offer, chances are they're going to be represented by one of those 5%, top 5% realtors. And you want your realtor to already have a relationship with their realtor, because it's just going to make the process so much better. They're already going to know, like, all right, what do we got to do? Talk to me. Like, let's make this happen. What does your seller need? What does your buyer need? So I'm a big believer in that. Again, that's a pretty easy part of the deal. And that's how you sell your flip. All right. And the next final topic we're going to talk about here are legal and tax structures for building your house flipping business. Now, I need to preface this with I am not a lawyer. I am not a CPA. So none of this is legal or tax advice. Please talk to your lawyer and your CPA. That's basically the whole point of this whole topic, is going to be you need to talk to a lawyer, you need to talk to a CPA. Every situation is different. Every single business is different. I can give you a very, very general and common structure, which is very, very simple, is just having an LLC. There's more ways you can structure. You can get into doing S corps and different things, but that's really, I think, more beneficial when you're talking about rental properties. Again, I'm not a tax professional, but my advice that was given to me was that there was two different options that were given to me. One, I was told by a couple of different lawyers I spoke to that you don't necessarily need an LLC because you can just get a really good umbrella policy, which we have. And that'll protect you just as much as the LLC, because if somebody's going to sue you, they're going to sue you regardless of whether you have an LLC. Now, the advantages of having an LLC is it is much more professional. You are a business. That actually is what makes you a business. So now I was flipping houses and investing for years before I started my first LLC. But I did, my partners that I was working with did have LLCs, so we always flipped houses under their LLCs. And then I was essentially paid as a contractor to the LLC, even though I'm the one that did all the work. So that's that one option. Really, you should, if you're serious and you want to start this business, go out and start an LLC. It's really easy. I think probably the majority of people starting off will just go to an online service like LegalZoom or any of those pages where you can make your own LLC quick and cheap and easy. And then the other option is you can hire an attorney. And if you hire an attorney to start your LLC, I would expect that you'd be paying somewhere between 500 to maybe 1,500 on the high end dollars in order to have them form the LLC for you. So again, I think that's something you can just do on your own. You don't need to hire an attorney. in most cases. But you should talk to an attorney. And you probably should have an attorney look over your LLC once you've prepared it yourself. So that's how I would structure. I would start an LLC. That way, when you buy a house, also, if you're doing this on your own and you're using hard money to finance your flips, you will need an LLC because the hard money lenders will not lend to you personally. The property has to be purchased by an LLC, and the loan will be given to the LLC. So that covers the legal structure. That's also pretty much covering the tax structure. You do need to talk to your CPA about how you're going to be taxed, but basically, I'm taxed as a self-employed business owner, and I choose how much I pay my salary, and I take profits at the end of the year. And basically, all of that is very similar to any other small business that you would own and how that would operate. So again, it's very critical that you talk to a real estate focused attorney and that you also talk to a CPA. And I highly recommend a CPA with experience in real estate. Now, again, realestatebees.com is an excellent resource. They have directories of all professions and professional services on their website. And so I highly recommend searching through their directory and maximizing, make the most out of that resource. So that's about all you need to know to start your house flipping business. I hope this was very valuable to you. I hope you'll take it seriously. I hope you will commit and give like we talked about, the very first thing that you need to start the business is that attitude, the drive, the determination, and the willingness to outwork all of the competition. That's how I succeeded at flipping houses because I was working a 9 to 5 at that time. And when I'd get home from work, I would start my real estate business and I would work till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And then I'd get up at 6:30 and go to work the next day. And Saturdays and Sundays, I just worked as much as I had to make it happen. And that's what it takes. Honestly, in today's market, in this business, you got to be willing to just work until your competition is sleeping. So if you can do that, you can succeed. And the silver lining in that, or the light at the end of the tunnel, is that it is not an endless process. So now I'm very fortunate and I'm very grateful that I did all that hard work in the beginning. And I did it for years. I mean, it probably was 2 to 3, maybe 3.5 years of working around maybe 80-hour weeks, anywhere from 60 to 80-hour weeks on average. Well, today I have the luxury of not having to work. My business is supporting me completely. In fact, I just took about 4, 5 months off where I did work, but I maybe worked 10 hours a week on average. And I traveled. I went home for a month and spent time with my mom there. And then I went to another vacation for 3 weeks, and I've just spent time around. I get to surf every day. I get to spend time with my dogs and my daughter, and loving my life. So it is worth it. The one caveat I'm going to leave you with this. Going back, it kind of relates to the old saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I think that's true. And I think if you are somebody that loves real estate and you find this industry fascinating, then you can work 100 hours a week and it feels like nothing. You enjoy it. And it's even on those nights when I'm working till 2 in the morning, it would be hard for me to stop because I love this business. I'm so passionate about real estate and I love helping people. I love, just everything we do. I love looking at the houses and running the numbers and the whole process of it. This is what I was meant to do and I love it. And so it I don't want to say it was easy to do that in the beginning, but it certainly makes it much more doable if you really enjoy this business. So I'll leave you with that. Again, if you're not really excited about real estate, you're just looking for a way to get out of your job, you might make it. It's still worth giving it a shot. But you might also want to consider some other industries where something that you are really passionate about. But chances are, if you're watching this video, and especially you've made it to the end of this video, that tells me you must be very interested and excited about real estate. So I think you're in the right place. Thanks for checking out our article and good luck.